Hello and welcome to the recorded version of the March 2021 regular webinar update. Hope you're keeping well and safe. It's Paul Sini with you for this session. This month we thought we'd bring you up to date with the story so far in terms of alternative assessment arrangements. We are as far as the live sessions are concerned, we are still running these 3 times a month. We will always upload the recorded version of the presentation sort of after the final of these 3 sessions has taken place, so after the last Tuesday of the month session when these happen. So you will always find them on the Maths and English Resource Hub. Hopefully you found this recording. As is normal, we will always have a slide deck alongside the recording as well. But you are, in the meantime, between sessions, you are always welcome to ask us questions or send questions to us. So just on that note, we are continuing to sort of collate and add to our sort of rolling Q&A document. You will find that document on the Functional Skills Qualification Documents page, and you can see a link to them on this slide. But if anything occurs to you in between the live webinar sessions, or as you listen to these recordings, you can always email us at pre-employment@sittinggolds.com. Now for the first of this month's, in case you missed it, for those of you who remember when Skills for Life was introduced, you might not have realised this, and the last sort of year I guess has passed everyone by, but 2021 marks 20 years since the launch of the Skills for Life strategy for adult numeracy and adult literacy in England, and obviously latterly for Esol as well. I was very fortunate at the beginning of this month to attend an event that Holex had organised, launching a new Skills for Life strategy document for the coming decade that had been commissioned through FETL. This document was looking not only at how maths, English and Esol are taken forward, but also digital skills in the coming decade. So it is an interesting read as a document. If you have a few moments to have a thumb through it, I would strongly encourage you to do so. And it was good to reflect on some of those kind of heydays of Skills for Life a couple of decades ago now. But as somebody who was involved right at the start, it was good to kind of go back and reflect on that period. Moving ourselves back up to date, meanwhile the DFE and the ESFA have updated their guidance on providing apprenticeships during the pandemic. This includes a new temporary flexibility that affects eligible apprentices, and from the 25th of February enables them to go ahead with their endpoint assessment even if they haven't yet achieved their maths and English, their functional skills qualifications, and there are some permutations or some restrictions around doing that, and it is quite strictly around if the reason for not being able to access functional skills is kind of COVID related, but it is obviously enabling them to do that. It is quite important to read the actual guidance document itself. It does set out the parameters quite thoroughly, and it's also, I think, important to be really clear that this is not an exemption from needing to achieve maths and English. Apprentices won't get their certificate until they've achieved all of what they're required to achieve, so that is still the case, but it does, from a sequencing point of view, allow their EPA to go ahead in the meantime. It is worth noting, just from a practical level, that any apprenticeship provider wishing to take advantage of this flexibility is going to need to get in touch with their endpoint assessment organisation. Our own EPA team at Sitting Golds has set up a notification form for doing this, although other EPA organisations may well have their own procedural arrangements for doing that. Worth also just noting that there is a temporary hold still on the requirement to attempt functional skills assessment at level 2 where apprentices are working towards a level 2 apprenticeship. That arrangement is only in place until the end of this month, so it only applies to apprentices who are due to complete their EPA by the 31st of March 2021. But again, the DFE ESFA document, and there's a link to it on this slide, obviously confirms the position for that. And then our third, in case you missed it for this month, worth noting that we are doing a little bit of work behind the scenes to reframe our practice sharing networks in England, particularly as blended learning sort of becomes much more of a default approach. We're very much wanting to make these sessions about practitioners having space to interact and share ideas. We did a couple of sessions earlier this month specifically for practitioners based in Northern Ireland and Wales, again to try and sort of move away from just talking about things that are very Anglo-centric all the time, but similar principle applied though, which was very much providing space for practitioners to kind of bring and share ideas. Just on the subject of networks, we're also going to be running a series of bite-sized focused practice sharing networks after Easter. We've recently added some dates to those to the Maths and English Resource Hub, so if you're involved in delivering those qualifications, you can go to the Maths and English Resource Hub webpage and find details and booking kind of information there. So on to the subject of testing. I think the first message as far as functional skills, Esol and the principles of Maths and English are concerned is that live assessments are still available for booking and delivery in the usual way, and that will remain the case, notwithstanding any alternative arrangements that might come into play. We have increased flexibilities around managing paper delivered functional skills to support centres with delivery in line with public health guidance, and you can find details of those in the ICE document, the instructions for conducting exams document. Always important to make sure you're working from the latest version of that document, and the latest version you'll always find that on the 4748 qualification page. The current version is 1.3 and it's dated November 2020. As well as running paper-based assessments, we're also still operating on screen for functional skills, for Esol reading and for the principles of Maths and English. All of those can continue to be booked as normal. In terms of some adaptations and some, in addition to that sort of traditional sort of model of face-to-face delivery, we also now have available what we're terming an interim test at home solution that can be used with functional skills, both the reformed and the legacy Maths and English qualifications, as well as with the Esol Skills for Life reading assessments at level 1, level 2, and again the principles of Maths and English. This process obviously allows the invigilation of external assessments to happen remotely. If you're wishing to take advantage of that facility, you will need to go through an application process as a centre, but the application form, you can find the details from the link on this slide. We also have a number of centralised test centre venues that we are managing ourselves, one in London, one in Birmingham and one in Bristol, and those are able to accommodate learners who are unable to do a functional skills test or at their own premises, or if there's a particular reason why you want to accommodate them centrally. Those will remain in place for at least for the next couple of months, so they are there, can accommodate both the legacy and reform functional skills again, so both 3748 and 4748, but also, unlike test at home, they can also accommodate learners doing ICT, functional skills ICT assessments. So on to the main sort of focus of this session, and it really follows on from the DFE and Ofqual consultation a couple of months ago, and particularly the outcome of that consultation that was shared on the 25th of February in a document called, snappy title here, Alternative Arrangements for the Award of Vocational and Technical Qualifications and Other General Qualifications in 2021. What this document essentially did was announce a new regulatory framework that's going to operate for this academic year, so will operate through till the 31st of August, and this has the snappy title Vocational Contingency Regulatory Framework, or VCRF, another acronym to get used to. essentially, and this is quite an important point, is it allows qualifications to be taken as normal where they can be, or with agreed adaptations if that's appropriate, or when necessary using alternative arrangements such as a teacher assessed grade or a tag. We've given some more details about that on our own COVID-19 updates page. Do make sure you bookmark that page to make sure you're visiting it regularly and you've got the very latest information from us. As far as functional skills and Esol skills for life are concerned, assessments should continue to be taken as normal or making use of the published adaptations where it's safe to do so. Tags is there that will then become available as a potential fallback where that's not possible. But in order to use that teacher assessed grade, that tag process, centres are going to need to apply to City Guilds for approval. They're going to need to explain why their assessments cannot take place in the normal way, and also why the published adaptations won't enable them to take place. We're currently in the process of working through the detail of how that will operate, and we will of course share that as soon as we are able to do so. So to put the arrangements into context, we are working alongside the other functional skills awarding organisations through the Federation Awarding Bodies, through FAB, and also of course with Ofqual as the regulator to agree and firm up the eligibility and evidential requirements for alternative arrangements. So there is obviously further details still to come, but let's share what we know so far. I think important to understand from the outset that the teacher assessed grade process, the tag process that's envisaged for this year, is not the same as the centre assessed grade process, the CAG process that operated in 2020. There's a very clear message from government and indeed from Ofqual that test is best. Test is the kind of preferred solution where possible. So what we won't have is a repeat of what happened last year, which was everybody treated in the same way, where tests were switched off for everybody and everybody went through this process of having a calculated result. What we will have this year is a fallback process that can kick in potentially where learners haven't been able to access a test, either delivered face-to-face or remotely, or where they can't reasonably hold back or delay from doing their assessment. Where that process does kick into place, there will obviously be some rules around eligibility and some rules around evidence requirements, and we'll obviously, as soon as we're able to sort of share the detail around that, we'll obviously do so. It is worth saying it's not wholly up to us to determine that unilaterally, in the sense that we are working jointly with the other awarding organisations to agree a common approach, and also to ensure that the regulator is comfortable with what we're proposing. So there is a kind of plan to share that in a kind of coordinated way. One of the things that will obviously be part of that that detail is some guidance for teachers and tutors to understand the range of potential evidence that could be used to support tag judgments. There will also be some detail around the process for centres to indicate that they're planning to use the tag submission process, and for identifying specific learners who they wish to put through this process. One of the things that kind of runs through all of this is some core principles, and the first of those is around obviously ensuring that the process as a whole is practical, is manageable, and is not creating any unnecessary burdens. But crucially, they do maintain the integrity of the qualifications, and particularly supporting valid and reliable results. And then finally, and again this is a kind of principle that's very much kind of part and parcel of all of these kind of potential adaptations, alternatives, is that what they're not intended to do is advantage or disadvantage any one learner over another. It is about trying to maintain the standard for all learners in all settings as far as humanly possible. Which brings me to the end of this sort of normal sort of scripted sort of input. What we would normally do during the live session is hold a Q&A session at this point. Obviously, just to reiterate, you are welcome to submit questions to us via the pre-employment@cityguilds.com address. But just finally, it just remains for me to say thank you again for your attention. I think we're very aware that everybody is incredibly stretched, incredibly busy at the moment, dealing with lots of issues, not least the potential adaptations around maths and English. We'll obviously share some further information about that process either during the routine webinar updates next month, or if we need to, we will organise some ad hoc additional sessions. I suspect it'll end up being the latter, but clearly we're not looking for anybody to wait any longer than they have to around the detail of this process, and we'll share obviously what information we can as soon as we can. So thank you again for your attention, and we will be in touch again next month.